Good morning, everybody, and thanks for waking up early and coming here to join us today in this fireside talk. I'm here, my name is Mona Shtaya. I'm leading Hamle, the Arab Center for the Advancement of Social Media Advocacy work on the local, regional, and international level. And today I'm here in this session alongside Khaled Mansour. Khaled is a writer and communication expert. He is also a member in the Oversight Board, or Meta's Oversight Board. And today we will have some sensitive questions to hear from Khaled. After 2 years of establishing the Oversight Board, where are they standing today, and what is the future of the Oversight Board and how they are working? So I have my own questions, but if you have also your questions, please feel free to pass it to me. So just to know, we only have 30 minutes. And to make sure that we are covering all the questions, if you have any question, please write it on a note paper and send it over through the communication channels on the table. And I'll make sure to cover all the questions. I hope that's fine with you, because if we are going to just share the mic, then it's gonna take us longer time. So I just wanna make sure that we are covering everything in 30 minutes. So I'll start with the first question. I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with the Meta Oversight Board, but just to make sure that we have the same understanding, I'll ask Khaled to tell us more about the Oversight Board mission, members, and work. Briefly, please.
I can't be brief, so you have to interrupt me. So the Oversight Board is an independent board made up of 23 people. It was established by Meta, but through a trust fund to ensure independence, to ensure a firewall between the corporation, which is Meta, and the board. The board is mandated to do two main things. One is to issue binding decisions on content, i.e. on posts specifically, either to take them down or to leave them up, by which it can reverse Meta's decisions on posts. The second main part of the mandate is to issue policy recommendations to Meta. And in all its work, it's guided by three things. It's guided by Meta itself policies. So we ensure when Meta says we've taken down this post by Ahmed Khair, for example, that they had something to support them in their policies. And secondly, that their values are respected, and the main value there is voice, the freedom of expression. And thirdly, that all of that is in compliance with the international human rights law, more specifically Article 19 about freedom of expression. So this is in a nutshell the work of the board.
Thank you. That's very brief. So the Oversight Board receive annual fund from Meta, and the last announcement said that you have received $150 million. My question in this regard, how can we ensure the independency of the Oversight Board work while you are receiving fund from them? Also, are you thinking, or do you have any thoughts about how can you develop a sustainable funding in case Meta decided to stop funding you one day?
Now, this is a new experiment in the sense that corporations don't usually cede power over their products to another body. Indeed, we received $150 million in July. That's supposed to maintain us for about 3 years. This is the second chunk of money. The money goes to a trust fund established under the US law for trusts, waqfiyya yani, and this waqfiyya is irrevocable. Yani they cannot take the money back. They cannot fire any member of the board. I mean, the board is answerable to a trust of trustees, and those trustees have to use a code of conduct if they want to get rid of a board member because of violations of this conduct. So the first chunk was $150 million. It took the board for about 3 years. So basically, we have money for 3 years. The issue of sustainability is not to ensure that Meta will continue funding only. This board will not become a success, or this experiment, unless it expands, unless other social media platforms think it's actually useful to have a content moderation independent body or autonomous body, or that board itself can expand its work to work on other social media platforms, or in an ideal world there can be more decentralization, and then there will be even regional boards. Of course, the devil in the details, how you can establish such complex bodies.
So recently, the Oversight Board announced 7 strategic priorities. Can you tell us more about them, and how do you think they are related to the MENA region? And how can civil society organizations contribute to take part in enriching your work on those priorities?
The permanent challenge every day for a board like that is what to take and what not to take in terms of the appeals or the cases coming. Very quick right through the numbers. Between Facebook and Instagram, which are the two platforms that this board has a mandate over, it does not have a mandate over WhatsApp, which is a very important issue. There are about 4 billion subscribers. Let's assume half of them are dormant. You have 2 billion. You have maybe 2 billion posts a day. In the last 2 years, we had 2 million appeals, i.e. a user like MENA or like Khaled objected to a decision by the Oversight Board to take down a post, or said, that post by Mona is very offensive, and he is or she is trying to take it down. Of these appeals that exhaust Meta system, 2 million came to the board, and we only have 34 cases. So between 2 million and 34 cases, then there are filters. One of these filters is the 7 strategic priorities. The 7 strategic priorities is to decide which issues we need to focus on. And these issues are, and I'm gonna go through them very quickly. Firstly, election and civic space. Secondly, gender, especially the gendered obstacles to freedom of expression. Conflict from Palestine to Ukraine. And hate speech, especially against minorities, treating users fairly, because users have complained for a long time that my post was taken down, I don't know why. So that people should be told and how they can be told, etc. Algorithms. All of you are very familiar in this region of how you write Hamas, ha, nota, meme, nota, alif, nota, stuff like that, thinking that you can con the algorithms. I think we need to fix the algorithms and not to try to con them. Dealing with governments. Governments have 2 ways in which they deal with Meta. Either they have direct channels to deal with Meta, especially law enforcement agencies, or governments have pages in which they send the stuff over. So these are the 7 priorities that help us cut down or choose. Secondly, cases have to be representative. So if you have 600 cases about sexual harassment, let's say for minorities in India, then it does make sense to take a case. Cases have to have a policy impact. So if we take Al Jazeera case, for example, a year ago that looked innocent, it's not really a big deal. Al Jazeera published something, an Egyptian retweeted it, he has 15,000 followers, it was taken down because it was DOI or dangerous organizations and individuals because of what it mentions. But by taking this and by making a recommendation about the fact, guys, your DOI doesn't work, the dangerous organizations and individuals policy, that led to the Palestine independent report, and hopefully it will lead to changes in that policy. So we also take cases that we think it will have policy implications. Finally, supposedly under the American style of case law or precedent, once we issue a case, there should be something called the identical content parallel context. Like, so this video we've taken down of mutilated bodies in a church in Nigeria, if we decide it has to be taken down, then all similar posts need to be taken down.
Since you mentioned the report, I'm not sure if everyone here is familiar with the report, but like based on what happened in May 2021, the civil society were recommending for so long that Meta should conduct the due diligence, the human rights due diligence on how they are moderating the Arabic Palestinian content and how they are moderating the Israeli Hebrew content. And to be honest, they never took that on a serious matter. But after the Oversight Board recommended that, based on the case that they received, they accepted this recommendation and they conducted that. So Khaled, since you mentioned this case, what is the role of the Oversight Board now, after we have the results of the BSR report and it confirms that there is over-moderation on the Arabic on the Arabic Palestinian content and under moderation of the Israeli Hebrew content. How do you think the Oversight Board should move, and how you can collaborate with the civil society organizations on this?
Firstly, this report came about because of you guys. So there was a public comment about the process of a decision. Let me take 30 seconds on this. Once we decide to take a case, so we took the case of Al Jazeera, for example, Al Jazeera report that was taken down, etc., etc. And after we take a case, we allow the public to make comments for 2 weeks. These comments are taken very seriously, including one comment by an organization called Habla, asking us like to review what we do with our DOI, or the dangerous, or what META does with its OI, the dangerous organizations and individuals, and the human rights infringements on the Palestinians' freedom of expression that happened during the Sheikh Jarrah episode. And we took that seriously. One of the recommendations was to call for that impact assessment. The report itself, firstly, we are still seized of the matter around DOI. We still take cases about the dangerous individuals and organizations, and we have certain concerns about definitions. For those of you who are working on this issue, they know that the definitions of praise, support, representation of a terrorist organization sometimes are not definite enough, clear enough. Examples given to moderators are not good enough. Algorithms are sometimes lax, or maybe not cognizant or aware of dialects, of sarcasm, etc., etc. So the report came out. It took a long time, but it came out, and it had 21 recommendations, and the finding was indeed the Palestinian human rights and freedom of expression were most likely affected negatively, and there was over enforcement on the Palestinian side and under enforcement on the Israeli side, or to be more precise, on the Hebrew side. So one of the results, one of the good positive results so far, is that now they have new algorithms for Hebrew, for hostile language in Hebrew. I don't know if there will be a review or not of listed organizations, because there is also a mismatch between the two sides. My understanding is that of the 22 recommendations by the PSR report, they accepted 10, 21, right? They accepted 10, they are still looking at 6.
They rejected one.
And they rejected one, which is do more research on that thing, which maybe I think it's also the role of civil society and academics, that they can do that as long as they can gain access to information from META. I think that report and other reports are extremely important, because they are a tool in the public sphere that you guys can use. Because at the end of the day, as I said to a few friends yesterday, we, the Oversight Board, we will be as strong as we receive support, including tough support, tough love, criticism from you guys, and how we can be better, how we can work better, as long as our work that leads to reports like that is supported in critical and in supportive ways by you, because this will enable us to work more, and to also show META and other social media platforms that it does make sense, it works.
Thanks, Khaled. So after 2 years of operating, I would love to ask you to share with us the impact of the Oversight Board work. What did you achieve?
What did they achieve? I just joined. I came in May, and of course it will be dramatically much better now since I joined. I think what's much more important is not the cases. As I told you clearly, of the 2 million appeals, we picked up 34 cases. We've made decisions on 28 of them. What really matters are the policy recommendations. And I know, and yes, I know they are not binding, but still they draw up a route to follow on how things can change and can become better. Of the 130 policy recommendations that were issued in these cases, 70% more or less were accepted, and they led to change. Starting from the fact, and again, apologies for people who don't speak English here, that we don't have simultaneous translation, that the policies of META are translated into local languages. If you have 800 million people who speak Punjabi and Hindi, in South Asia, or 230 million or less or more users of Facebook, Instagram, etc., who speak only Arabic, they need to know what is the policy. At least those of them who are interested in reading the policy, so they can not violate it, or they can be careful, or they can resist it, or they can ask to change it. So things like translating the policies. Secondly, publishing government requests. All of us complain, and in this region specifically, all of us have a great I was trying to say, like, yeah, a lot of mistrust, to put it mildly, towards the government and the authorities. And we need to know, are the Emiratis really calling this company? And what about the Saudis and the Israelis? Really? And how do you respond? So there was an acceptance and a positive reaction from MENA to our requests, our policy recommendations, to publish at least the numbers of government interactions. Government interact with them through either special channels, or simply sometimes by emails. Pardon me? Yeah, yeah, to have more transparency report. Thirdly, many people complain whether it was a human being who took down their post or automation. Now they must inform whether this decision was taken by an algorithm or was taken by a human. So I think in terms of recommendations and policy recommendations, it's working. Is it ideal? Not yet.
Okay, since you mentioned the binding, non-binding, can you tell us more the difference between the binding decisions or binding warning screens and the non-binding recommendations? Like, from like definition perspective, what is decision, what is recommendation, when you take this, and why this is binding, why this is non-binding?
It's just the rule book of the Oversight Board. It's very simple. That's a short one. Decisions on posts are binding. So if I say Jack's post about nudity, you've taken it down, bring it up, they must, within a certain number of days, bring it up again. Or that post that you have not taken down is actually offending such and such policies, it must be taken down. These are binding decisions, post by post. Policy recommendations are not binding. They answer within 60 days and say, okay, we're gonna take this, we can implement that, this is not feasible, etc., etc. So these are the two differences. Now, the warning screens is something new that we just received. Instead of a binary approach, like saying, take this down, leave this up, I can say, well, that terrorist attack, it's actually gory, it's very bloody, it's showing graphic violence, but it's very important in the way it's written and published to show how this occupying army is killing people or killing civilians, and it has a value in raising awareness. However, not everybody would like to know about this value by looking at such horrible photos. So a warning screen about disturbing content can be imposed. That's now also a tool that we have.
That's amazing. So you have another thing that I've heard from you previously, which is the policy advisor opinion. What is that, and how's that working with Meta?
So now, how do we get cases? So we get cases either by any user here, if any of you guys still uses Facebook, either asking for content to be returned or content to be removed. And then we receive also requests from Meta. So Meta has an urgent post. They find it a difficult case. There is a huge contradiction between their commitment to voice, i.e. freedom of expression, and, for example, the safety of somebody, or the dignity or authenticity of that voice. A fourth thing is this PAO, which stands stands for Policy Advisory Opinion. So 3 of them have been taken up by the Oversight Board in the last couple of years, a year and a half. One about doxing, the publishing of personal information. The second was about misinformation, disinformation over COVID. The results should come out maybe early next year. And the third one was about the infamous X-check or cross-check, which gives favorable, to cut a long story short, gives favorable treatment to certain users by giving them a double review of their content before the content is taken down. That should come out in a couple of weeks or very soon. And a policy advisory opinion is a big piece of work, in the sense that you look at all the implications from starting from Meta's own policies, the international human rights law, the context, the benefits of like leaving this information under the freedom of expression rules or taking it up because the offline harm can be great, etc., etc. So this is basically the policy advisory opinions.
Since you mentioned that you are covering things based on policy, law, context, and other things, when Meta established the Oversight Board like 2 years ago, there was an op-ed written by David Kai, the former special rapporteur of freedom of expression, called the Republic of Facebook, about the Oversight Board. And since you are having like such things and you are looking into the context, why people can't elect the members of the Oversight Board? Like the first 20 members were appointed by Meta, and then people are applying and they are like going through a very long process. I believe you told me about this, but like, yeah, why people can't elect their Oversight Board members? If we are talking about context, languages, different regions.
Of course, looking at the kind of people who are getting elected in the world in the last 2 years, I'm not very optimistic about that, but jokes aside. I think corporate governance is a very murky issue. Corporates are usually beholden to the laws of the country and to the shareholders. They are not beholden to anybody else. And the laws of the country supposedly in a more developed country represent the common interests of the people, right? Of course, that doesn't happen in many countries. So by the mere fact that a corporation decided to cede some of the power, for many reasons, including self-serving reasons, to cede some of that power of controlling the content and give it to a body that's autonomous, and that also a big discussion we can have if we have 300 minutes and not 30, is a good development. Now, how can that develop? I think 3 ways. Elections is not one of them now. I think this is a bit idealistic, too far off. One is expanding that to other companies. Because basically, if one company, regardless of the fact that it has 2 or 3 or 4 billion users, is committing itself to this, while Twitter, for example, is making it free for all, then it's problematic from a business perspective. That restriction on the company ability to control or to moderate content has to be expanded to other platforms to become more effective. So that's one, either by the Oversight Board or by other boards or whatever. Secondly, geographical. Maybe this also can be a decentralized thing, that in the future you can have decentralized bodies. Of course, that's also problematic because most of these companies try to use universal framework to judge content, and that's very problematic, as we all know. Because, for example, you can deny the Holocaust in America and get away with it, but you cannot do that in Germany. Or the rules on nudity are different from Colombia to Indonesia, stuff like that. So that's again the other challenge, the universality of the rules. And thirdly and finally, the independence. So at one stage or another, if these can become fully independent and not only based on the goodwill of the companies, that will be great. However, you will always need the goodwill, because the Oversight Board, it's not only the money, right? It is the access to information. So they open up the information and tell you why they did that decision, how different is the guidance they send to human moderators from the public policies, stuff like that. Without that cooperation, you don't have the power to force them to give you that information.
Splendid. Okay, so since you just mentioned the other companies and the ecosystem and how like the Oversight Board is working, but like also you are facing different challenges, what is the future of the Oversight Board? We have heard recently that other platforms such as Twitter is intending to establish something similar. How do you think this will contribute to have a better governance for the tech companies, or how could that like influence the users in a good way or in a bad way?
I think, of course, if we take Elon Musk tweets as a sign of intent, then we are in trouble, because they change tremendously, and all of that was based on a tweet he did about the need for a council on moderating content. Having said that, as I said previously, it's this experiment has maybe 2-3 years window, and it does have to expand, because if it remains only limited to Meta, and if it remains only limited in its impact to what it has done so far, it will be a bit problematic. It needs to expand in terms of platforms. It needs to expand more in terms of geography. It needs to be more sustained, and maybe with the support of governments, without the governments themselves taking over the lead. Like, one hopes that the Digital Services Act that was imposed by the EU can provide an opening into having a better role for autonomous content moderation bodies that can do that as well.
And following on that, what is the future of the content moderation? Like, generally, but also in our region, like taking into consideration governments, authoritarian regimes, how tech companies are dealing with that. We don't have really decent laws to protect, like we don't have the GDPR, we don't have the DSA, we don't have like all those like nice legislations. So how do you think the future of content moderation will be or will look like in our region?
Well, our region is not really that different from other regions. The issue is, so far we have gone through the easy terrain, which is Facebook and Twitter, because it's instantaneous. It's not that instantaneous. Now wait for metaverse. Wait for all these metaverse, from Fortnite and all these games that kids play and interact with each other, to the real metaverse, where people might spend half of their time in 10-20 years. Will you content moderate or not? How would you regulate that? There will be a lot of violations. There has to be on the metaverse. Who will have control? The legal control. I mean, starting from there is already a case about rape in metaverse. That, I think, is the main challenge, to content moderate on huge platforms that are happening instantaneously, happening live. And you can't, as is the case with WhatsApp, for example, record everything. Supposedly you are providing an encrypted private service. You can go into a private room on any of the metaverses that's available and invite 5 of you and do whatever you like. Will you start surveillance and all of these to make sure that nothing bad happen? I think this is, maybe when I think of it, is the most significant challenge that we will have to grapple with.
So I got one question. I'm not sure if, like, I believe this is for Meta, but I'm gonna share it with you. If you have any comment on that, that would be amazing. How does the Oversight Board handle government requests? I know the government requests goes directly to Meta, but like how you handle this, where content may violate local laws but not Meta's policies. And we have example government criticism in Egypt.
It's indeed a question to Meta, and I think our role is to convince, urge, pressure Meta to be more transparent about that, about the requests, and they need to publish the numbers and maybe hopefully also the content of these requests. We have a case that I don't know if the decision was published at the UK drill next week. Okay, so we have a case in point about this, where there was a request from the law enforcement agencies in the UK, and not only Egypt, asking for a certain action against a certain post, and I think we made a decision on this that will be interesting for the company and will answer partly that question as well.
Wonderful. Is there anything? Okay, we are going to wrap up. Like, this is there anything that you would like to address before we finish this? Okay, so Muhammad, go ahead.
Speaking of the metaverse, what do you think potentially how the board will consider the metaverse? Will it consider it as content, or will it consider it something else? And in that case, maybe it is a question for Meta.
For For the sake of time, very briefly, metaverse is content. You've taken actions, but verbally, but in a virtual space. Okay, you're threatening. Life is a game in a sense. You are threatening people. You're affecting people's emotion. You're spreading. Let's say that you have a huge room, either in Clubhouse or in a metaverse, and you are talking about how great the Russians are and they have the right to squish and burn every last Ukrainian. How should the owner, the provider of that service that's enabling you to amplify your voice to hundreds of people behave and answer with that? The challenge is technical, really. I mean, because all of us will not have a lot of trouble saying what should be in, what shouldn't be out, and there will be some controversial stuff, especially around terrorism, around hate speech, what's hate speech, da 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 da. But to enforce this on places where you have millions of people talking in real time, that's basically like trying to enforce that in real life. Because in real life, when you are sitting at the cafe, you can say things and you expect nobody will take you to court for that. But once you put it outside on a newspaper, or you put it on a paper and you start blasting it in Hamra Street, you should be liable, right?
Yeah, I was just talking about rules. You know, there is Second Life, which was the precedent for what's presumed to be metaverse, and content moderation, which is feasible on a longer space of time. But for rules, like rules exist, and then if you break the rules, you're banned, which is totally different, in my opinion, than content moderation. This is why I'm talking. In that case, maybe the approach will be different. Will it be related to the mandate of the board, or maybe it will be only a meta decision? This is why I mentioned my earlier comment that might end up as a meta only decision.
It's not yet part of the mandate. Like WhatsApp, it's not part of the mandate, and nobody, including me, has an answer for this. I'm just saying rules will be the easier part. Enforcement will be the real challenge.
Okay. Thank you everybody for joining us. Like, we know 30 minutes are not enough to talk about the Oversight Board work and the meta content moderation policies and other things, but like this was just a short like fireside talk where we had like those questions for Khaled, but like I'm pretty sure that all of you have other questions, so maybe we can grab a coffee and we can continue the conversation. But thanks for joining us, and thanks Khaled and the Oversight Board team who arranged this. Thank you very much.